Well, I just want to say it's an honor to be here. I dreamt of being here 30 years ago. And I have watched all the epic horticulturalists come through these, and I've studied everybody. It's just an honor. Thank you so much for letting me be in your house, just with appreciation. So I'm going to start with fire. So one of the books I wrote is called Firescaping. It's the best-selling book on landscaping for fire protection. This is the 28 worst fires, according to structural loss, that we have had in California. And you can see the trend is going upwards. I swear after the tunnel fire, 1991, I thought that was as epic as we were going to get. And then lo and behold, it was the tubs, and then lo and behold, it was camp, and then the LA fires right there. The reason I bring this up is because my fire was the tunnel fire in 1991. I was living in Mill Valley in Marin County, and I was determined to save my little neighborhood, Homestead Valley. And so I started studying and researching, and naturally, anytime you study fire, you really have to start with the very first urban wildland fire. And that was the 1961 Bel Air fire. It was the very first urban wildland fire. Federal and state funding poured into LA County. They were going to solve the problem. A lot of that money ended up in the LA Arboretum into this individual's hands named Kenneth Montgomery. And he burnt hundreds of plants and came up with a plant list that he felt would save California. And this plant list was naturally chaparral plants, Australian plants, South African plants, drought-tolerant plants, and we have held on to that plant list ever since. So in the 1991 tunnel fire, right after that, the largest voices to come out of that was Moritz and Radcliffe, and they too came to the defense. We just need more California-friendly plants in California. And I, as a writer and as an aspiring horticulturalist, jumped right on board. And my very first firescaping book was all about native plants and California-friendly. And then I wrote ocean-friendly gardens, and that was all native and stuff. And then I wrote this California-friendly maintenance book. But after the Tubbs fire, something had to give. This can't go on. We're not done. LA, if you look at this trajectory, LA isn't the end. We have a witch, we have a cedar ahead of us, we have another Eden ahead of us, another Palisades ahead of us. Something has to change. We need to change the metrics of sustainability. So I'm going to propose that you be the measure of sustainability. I'm going to propose that what if your family was the measure? What if your immunity, your feelings of well-being, your sense of purpose? What if your digestive health was the measure of sustainability? And all those things are quantifiable. I can actually measure them and all have impacts in a garden. What if California's gardens started growing people? We went to the nursery for people. And this whole idea of gardening for people is not without a mandate. We are in the 6th mass extinction. Right now, we are losing species at a rate only comparable to 6 other times in the planet's 4.5 billion history. It is dire. And one of the surest ways to slow or stop that species loss is half Earth. We set half the Earth aside for wild, native, and natural endeavors. So all the wasps, all the mosquitoes, all the mountain lions, all the bears, you just come out. That is your half. The other half is our building materials, our healthcare, our self-care, our food, our textiles. And this is in fact what motivated Newsom's 30-30 plan, Biden's 30-30 plan, is to set as much of America aside so we stop losing these species. And the only way this idea is going to work is if urban areas start caring for the needs of its consumptive members. We really need to start buckling down. And so that's what this is the premise, the thesis behind this latest book, Regenerating Essential Goods and Services in Urban Areas, is the ideology here is that caring for you cares for the planet. If I can meet your needs right outside of your house, your business, your recreational spots, I keep that need from being externalized into a yet undeveloped landscape. We move. And so for the last 13 years, I've been exploring that. How to grow the healthiest humans. So what I'll cover tonight is that exploration: thermal comfort, public health, ceremonial items, food, building material, energy, and then self-care. And I'm getting old. I don't have many years left. And I'm only gardening now for my great niece, Calliope. She's the metric of my sustainability. Her health, her sense of purpose in life is what I now garden for. So we'll start with thermal comfort. Every year we're setting a heat record. And we are going to set another one, it looks like, in 2025, given the warmth of this winter. Cooling our cities is critical. Now, a landscape can cut heating and cooling costs by anywhere between 25 to 50%. In hot and dry climates, it can be as much as 50%. The cooling effect of trees cuts energy costs to the point where they can pay for themselves within 6 to 8 years. You get your money right back when you naturally cool neighborhoods. And importantly, it stops that feedback loop. As the planet warms, we crank on our air conditioners, increasing the need for industrial energies. Those industrial energies create more heat in our atmosphere, which means we need more air conditioning. And we're getting in this amplifying feedback loop. And naturally cooling our communities slows or stops that feedback loop. And there's 6 main strategies to cooling urban areas, and these are ranked according to effectiveness per dollar spent. So shade, airflow, evaporative processes, materials, which are light colored, low density, insulation, and then earth cooling. And I'm sure many of you have been here, Audubon Center in Debs Park. Beautiful place. It doesn't need air conditioning. I might add, this is the very first LEED certified building in the nation, and it's in LA, only 5 miles from here. It's a view. But when shading, wind funneling, low density materials, and evaporation are combined, sorry about that, you get this really, so this has been orientated to accept the ocean breeze. And it compresses that breeze, speeds it up, and pushes that air over 2 small fountains and under a canopy of wild grape, absorbing that moisture and cooling that air. That air then flows into these 2 buildings to naturally cool it. So this landscape not only provides refuge on a hot summer day, but it actually cools and reduces the energy needs inside of those buildings. Here's another good example. This is at Cal Poly Pomona. This is a LEED certified silver building, and it again has been orientated to accept the ocean breeze. They funnel it, speed it up through the Venturi effect, and then load it with moisture to cool it down even more, and then the wind splits and cools those 2 courtyards. It's my favorite place to have lunch at Cal Poly Pomona. It makes you feel like you're sitting next to a stream because you feel the wind, you can hear the wind, and it's nothing but this cooling energy. It really pulls people out of the building. It's a wonderful, and these little features are phenomenal. Their return on investments are fantastic. And we can be doing this throughout Southern California. Okay, public health. This is one of my pet peeves and things I've researched so intensely. Allergies and asthma continue to rise in our kids and in our communities. Bone density continues to fall. Immunity is lowered and lowered as time goes on. Lung capacity, this has been well researched, is declining in inner city kids. Reproductive success. Did you know modern males have less sperm now than we ever did? I don't know where it's going, TikTok or YouTube or something like that. but it's going somewhere. And we are losing our reproductive capabilities and then social connections. All of these maladies have cures in a garden. And I think this picture shows a perfect example of repelling people out of landscapes, telling people that their health and well-being will not be found in a garden, when for millions of years, our health and well-being was only found in a garden. This is the closest K through 6 school by my house. I live on the other side of the tracks. Every one of those plants stabs people. This is where they drop the kids off. And it's a heating landscape. So any child waiting for their mother at the spot after class, if they're curious enough to walk into the garden, will be rewarded by getting stabbed or poisoned by the palo verde or the agave. And this antagonistic, malicious kind of design pushes people out of the garden and into CVS, into industrial energies, into industrial medicines, when we know that the garden is truly the place to do it. So there's strategies that we can adapt throughout Southern California. We can screen and clean particulate and gaseous pollutants. LA is known for being one of the dirtiest spots in America. We can reduce allergens. Up to 19% of all Californians have allergies, and that's on the rise. And that's just an average. That's not a respiratory disadvantaged community like South LA, Boyle Heights, Curdy Mesa. Reduce the use of night lighting. Let everybody get a good night's sleep. And then design for emotional well-being. Activate people. Make them feel good about their experience. It's like it's illegal to have joy in landscapes anymore. And then oxygen gulpers. So there are a lot of strategies in any of my designs if you hired me. And if we lived in a polluted area, I would put plants right outside your home that gulp the nitrogen, sulfur, and carbon oxides to improve your respiratory health. And here's just some really good examples. We have loquat, Hoya Santa, and passion vine that are just known oxide gulpers. Not only are they cooling the classrooms at the Lyle Center and providing refuge, but they're providing food, and they're absolutely cleaning the air and helping with the health of our students at Cal Poly. A lot of this how to clean up urban pollution has come from Japan and China. And Japan really leads the planet right now in coming up with strategies to mitigate airborne pollutants. And one of the most startling things about the research I've read is that juniper and cypress are the all-time best at removing particulates. Now, I don't know if you know about particulates, but when you breathe them in on a repetitive basis, you get scarring in the trachea. And over time, you'll get lung cancer or throat cancer or cheek cancer, very common with urbanites. And now I recommend, if I was your designer, to plant junipers right along the street to catch the brake dust, to catch the carburetor dust, and to really make sure that those fine particulates don't go into your house as those cars are flying by on your busy residential street. These are just simple strategies we can use. Anybody read that article by Jeanette Mardantos, the home and garden editor of the LA Times, back in September of 2022? She wrote this incredible article on the health benefits of gardening. She said, according to this article, it improves your immunity, improves your sense of well-being. It will extend your life by years. In fact, the old adage is gardeners live up to 14 years longer than non-gardeners. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The sunlight, the mild activity, the range of movements. But then some scientists say it's actually the microbes. They just boost your immunity. It's an evolutionary, historic relationship that we've always had with the soil. And when we divorce ourselves, we lose those benefits, that sense of purpose, that sense of well-being, and that immunity. So the lessons from years of research in this is, one, get dirty. Just get dirty. Get your hands in that soil. Get that boost from those microbes. Have fun, for sure, and learn how to give and receive. This is a picture of Orange Homegrowns. They have a community farm in my city. And when we were developing the farm in the first place, the executive director was bringing in all the neighborhood kids to make mud pies. And the reason only being was to get them dirty, to inoculate them with their historic connection to the land. They loved it, loved it. And this is what health looks like in urban areas in the 22nd century, is people getting dirty and involved and into their garden. And then ceremonial items. So we've done thermal comfort, we've done public health, and now ceremonial items. And I think ceremonial items are actually a better bet than food in urban areas. There's so many reasons, and I'll discuss it, but boy, we could be growing for Chinese New Year's, Valentine's, St. Patrick's Day, Passover, and Easter, Earth Day, Mother's Day, Independence Day, Yom Kippur, Halloween, Day of the Dead, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah. I'm not going to pronounce that right. I mean, here's just some really good examples. If you go through Boyle Heights or Lincoln Heights, you'll see a lot of the streets are lined with marigolds for Day of the Dead. We could have all our streets lined with ceremonial items, and why not? Ceremonial events are so consumptive. Think about every holiday that you've seen, and then the day after, your whole street is lined with trash cans that are overfilling. We could be growing that. And instead of filling up trash cans, we could be filling up our compost bins. We can actually close some loops in urban areas by taking care of our ceremonial items. And then these are Christmas trees growing off the 5 freeway in San Juan Capistrano. So they're absorbing the pollution, the particulates, the gases. And then the community members are taking these keepsakes home, loving them for 3 or 4 weeks, giving them back to be recycled. This is just one way to live with our 21st century craziness. Here's some things that I've done over the years. So I grow my own loofahs, of course, and I give loofahs out, the sponges, for birthdays, Christmas. These are just such easy gifts, and they're wonderful in that when you're done with them, you just throw them away. I regularly make placemats and coasters for dinner parties. And I just harvest these from the Mexican fan palms that just love people. You'll always find this plant around people. It's a people follower. And so it's an easy plant to harvest. And as far as a fiber plant goes, it's incredible. Just a basket I made from prunus branches and hedra ivy. Quickly whip that up, just 100 feet out my front door. And then the middle is yucca fibers. And then that dye pie you see there, that took 8 months to brew up. But I was really curious to see how many colors I could get within 5 miles of my house without driving. How much could I brew up without ever getting in my car? And I'll tell you some of the iconic colors here. That deep, rich brown is from redbud, the cercis. The royal purples from cochineal, that bug that sits on prickly pear, which is really easy to find in urban areas. Nobody knows the value of that dye. That sunny yellow is the Chinese tallow tree, which I've actually brewed tallow from. It's just a very interesting plant. That kind of orangey one is avocado skins, but I have coyote brush tops here, I have eucalyptus here, I have pine here. I just tried all kinds of dyes, and it was just so much fun. So once I got this mastered, every Christmas people were getting kitchen towels dyed by me. But I was just looking at ways to integrate myself into the landscapes around me, and to reduce the waste and to reduce my own consumption. So I was really trying to create deeper and more meaningful relationships with my community here. Here's some more examples. This is just in my hometown. Somebody works for an arborist every winter. They just sort out the most valuable branches and then make ornamentation that then a local retailer sells in my downtown. If you've ever been to the Marin Art and Garden Center in Ross in Northern California, there's a fiber garden run by a guy named Charlie. I can't pronounce his last name. He is just a marvel, but that willow basket and that willow ornamentation was all made from polarized willows on site. And there again, instead of creating green waste, he's creating baskets. He's creating relationships. There's not green bins in front of his garden, but there's people and there's joy in front of his gardens. It's a completely different ethic. And even this is another good example, as Fiber said, the Point Reyes Station is showing that we can grow cotton, wool on our farms and in our lands and reduce the fire risk and still promote biological diversity. So you're looking at a sweater from cotton that was grown in Sonoma. It was brewed up in Marin, and then the indigo, the temperate indigo, was actually grown on site in Point Reyes Station. And then that necklace, I just quickly made that for my favorite, my best friend and his wife, who took me on an adventure. And I just made it from willow bast and Spanish bayonet, which is yucca. And just quickly redded that, crafted it, dyed it, and then whipped it up. But these little small things, I didn't jump in my car. I didn't go to the, I didn't jump on the consumer thing. And what's so neat about all this stuff is when it goes kaput, and it will, it's organic, just like me, it just composted. There's no green waste bin at the end of this stuff. And then food. Everybody thinks there's only two paths to sustainability in California: native plants and food. But in order for food to be truly environmental, we have to be better than industrial agriculture. We have to be better than the San Joaquin Valley, the Sacramento Valley, or the Coachella Valley. And that's actually a heavy lift. It's actually not so easy, and I'll show you why. This is why. So when you grow food with massive amounts of car trips, store-bought resources, plastics, and PVC, the amount of embedded energy into your food becomes so high. So the food grown in a garden like this runs at about an energy deficit of 20 units to 30 units of energy in for 1 unit of digestible energy out. Now, industrial agriculture runs at about a 6-to-1. 6 units of fossil energy in for 1 unit of digestible energy out. This type of food system can't feed 19 million people. Luckily, there's 2 other types of food systems in urban areas that can do a better job. The first one is passive foods. Passive foods is where you get your food to do more than just food production. You can get it to clean the air, you can get it to cool, you can get it for fire protection, you can grow animals, you can make materials, privacy, stormwater, and so much more. If we can get our food to do more than just one thing, then the energy metrics completely change and they evolve to 1-to-1. And this avocado is the best example that I've ever found of urban food production. This is in my neighborhood. And that one avocado, dollars and nutrition fall from the sky. The shading is so intense that it cuts their air conditioning costs down to almost nothing. This is an evergreen plant, so it provides protection year-round. It diffuses thousands of gallons of stormwater every year. If this was a deciduous tree, that rain would just pour right through the tree. But this tree is capturing and slowly releasing that water into the environment over time. It's animal pollinated, so it's not an allergen threat. There's no allergen problems with this tree. It gulps nitrogen, sulfur, and carbon dioxide, so it's cleaning the air. And one of the most important things about this tree is any kid can climb it. It is a jungle gym, as it has historically been for thousands of years. This one tree does all of that. This tree is so amazing that the city of Santa Ana is now starting to put it in their pocket parks around their city for all these health benefits. And in fact, Union Station, if you've ever been to Union Station and walked out to where Amtrak and Greyhound buses pick you up, you are escorted by avocado trees. I was so stoked for them to value public health and well-being at Union Station. And there's more things we can do with urban food. We can grow bees. Now, honeybees are non-native, and I would never recommend them anywhere along the wildlands. So if you're up against the foothills or in the mountains, I would never recommend a hive. But this picture was taken in Venice, and Venice is only surrounded by the ocean and concrete. What a place to grow honey. And if the hive dies, no big deal. You've lost a non-native species. It's not a risk. So this gal is just harvesting the pollen and the nectar that's within 3 miles of her house and feeding her children with a superfood. That is passive foods. And then this is a garden on the Santa Ana River Trail. It was designed and maintained by the workers of a car wash. This is passive foods. There's no annuals, there's no chard. No, it's all shrubs and trees. It's papaya, loquat, sugarcane, citrus, and it's all managed by the workers. And this food garden provides refuge, it provides purpose, it provides shade, and it provides nutrition for these people that need it. And they covet this garden. I've passed this garden over 70 times, and I've always seen those workers in it. They have such a sense of pride. This is what we need in urban areas, to drag people out of their house and engage them with their land. This is so important because the green industry is in a state of decline. It really is. And we need to boost it, reinvigorate it by prioritizing public health and well-being. And then we can grow food for fire protection, as has been done for hundreds of years. Not one California mission was ever lost to a wildfire. Part of that has to do with their architecture. The other part has to do with what they did with the land around it. They planted food and animals, and the fire just passed right around their structures. Now, 2 of the missions were lost to uprisings, but that's a totally different type of defense. But food can protect our citizens, can protect my grandniece. And then the last food is, I could spend the next 18 weeks on this one slide, but I don't have one slide. Spontaneous foods. 80% of the weeds that you have in your garden are edible. 40% of the weeds that you have in your garden are superfoods. In fact, if you go to a health food store and shop for natural remedies, you're shopping for weeds. You are. It's no coincidence. This is Homo sapien ecology, is really what it is. I'm a non-native. I really think I'm the invasive species, and I just brought my ecology with me when my family came over in 1911. And so here's just some really good examples. So the bottom left is chicory. Chicory is very common in Southern Cal. It just shows up in the Sacramento Basin. It's everywhere. I got that one in Compton. Chicory root is a coffee substitute. I'm sure some of you have drinking it. It's super good for your digestive and reproductive health. And then the leaves are a superfood. Right here, I just started making a soup out of cheeseweed, fillery, and dandelion. The nuts right here are the California bay nuts, and they're roasted. I just roast them up, and they are delicious. They taste like burnt popcorn infused with espresso, and they are a delight. Oh, they're really fun. And then, I don't know if anybody knows this weed, but this just showed up in my garden one day, and that's epazote, or Mexican tea. Does anybody know about this plant? Yeah. This plant loves you. This plant loves a Netflix night, is what this plant loves. It's anti-flatulence. And so it's just a cure for anti-flatulence. And so if you're having a Netflix night with your significant other, just brew this up. And it just makes that couch adventure a little easier. But it just shows up. It just shows up. And I'm convinced my mom loves me. She is always sending these healthcare and these needs that I need into my garden. And all I have to do is recognize her goodness, acknowledge it, and provide just a tiny bit of protection. And now this plant is slowly spreading around. I'll have enough for a mole soon, but I've only been doing leaves up till now. It just hasn't taken over. And then black mustard, you guys know, and I'm sure most people hate black mustard. It was brought over with the Spanish missionaries for a cure for scurvy. They didn't have a cure for scurvy, and scurvy would have been the #1 health risk for people on a boat for 2 years. And they needed to know wherever they went, they had their health care with them. And so they brought over black mustard. Black mustard really didn't get a stranglehold on our state until the early 1960s, and then it just took off. And it took off with the Great Car Revolution is what it was. We changed the atmosphere. These are voracious nitrogen oxide gulpers, and they live off the atmosphere. So if we change the atmosphere, we are going to change the plant cover, and that's exactly what we did in California. But it is delicious. I don't know, I've done as much as I can with this plant as absolutely possible. Every part of it is edible. The seeds are really the mustard. The flowers are delicious. And I've baked the leaves, I've eaten the leaves, I've done as much as I can with that plant. But I think our mother was telling us something with that plant. Okay, so I only had one slide on spontaneous foods, the non-native naturalizing plants. I just didn't want to overwhelm you. And then timber, we could definitely be growing timber. My second thesis, graduate thesis, I looked at urban timber production. Could we take our large regional parks, I did this in Orange County, the County of Orange manages about 7,000 acres of regional parks. And I thought, well, what if all those trees we were growing for timber? And then that timber could be our chairs, our tables, our beds, our cabinets. Because as it stands right now, when a tree dies, for a variety of reasons, we cut it down, we chip it up, compost it. All that carbon it took decades to sequester is re-released within a year and a half. Is there a way to hold on to that carbon and keep it embedded into our community to create a local closed-loop carbon cycle? So I partnered with Angel City Lumber in Boyle Heights, and we looked at this. And it turns out, yeah, it could be viable. Economically, it becomes viable after 1,100 acres. So if you're just managing 400 acres, you're going to run a deficit. But anything over 1,100 acres, and you really start making a profit on urban timber production. Now, the thing about urban timber production is we don't produce enough to go through the regulatory hoops for load bearing. You need tens of thousands of acres to create load bearing timber. So all the timber that a city would be producing or a county would be producing would be everything but load bearing. So Angel City brewed up those two, the benches and the raised beds. Those are all trees from LA County. You can see a deodar fence was made in LA. Just wonderful uses for keeping carbon in our community. This is the Richmond Green Waste Recycling Yard in Point Richmond. They take trees from across the Bay Area, they'll mill them up, and then they sell them back to the cities of Oakland and San Francisco for all their steps, retaining walls, handrails, whatnot, to bend, borders, whatever you need in your landscape. And then even just this wash basin is just a good example of utilizing what's immediately around you and making the best of your environment to create those rich, deep relationships. And this is just some more examples. Again, this is the Moraine Art and Garden Center's fiber garden, and everything you see in that picture was grown within just 200 feet of it. So the benches, the shade structure, the screening was all crafted just right around it. Again, these type of gardens don't have green waste bins. And then this was just, this is Moonwater Farm in Compton, and they had a tree go down just a couple houses from them. They grabbed all the branches and just made a quick shade structure with a ladybank's rose on it. So quickly constructed a cooling feature, a public health feature, without a car trip. They reduced the greenway stream, and it's just soulful and beautiful to be in that spot. And then energy, my gosh. You know, one of the very first rules of thermodynamics is there is no such thing as a free lunch. There's just no such thing. To wean ourselves, to call renewable fuels planet saving is disingenuous if we're using the same amount of energy. There's cost, and we're seeing it in the deserts right now. Our environmental kick is paving over the Sonora and the Mojave deserts with solar panels right now. We're putting bird blenders on all our ridge tops in the Pacific Flyway, and we're calling this green, all because we want to avoid the bottom right, the fossil fuel future. It's all dirty. I can't think of any mass industrial fuel that doesn't have an environmental consequence. So how do we create landscapes that embrace energy, and how do we create these landscapes? And the way to do is manifest passive energies. These are the energies, the people energies. These are the energies that the people have access to. Industrial energies are something out there, but we have so many energies that we can drag into our urban landscapes. And the five most harvestable are biofuels, earth, human, solar, and wind, and picture is just biofuels. Now we can use biofuels for all kinds of things. At the Lyle Center up at Cal Poly, we push all our compost up against this one building every winter to warm the inside of it as that pile slowly decomposes and releases its energy. We can also burn it for cooking, and I know there are particulate problems with burning, but it's current carbon. It's not ancient carbon like the gas. Every time you turn on the gas, that is prehistoric carbon. And then this is the Dixie Fire up in Northern California, Napa. Dixie was the largest fire, or second largest fire, per acreage ever in our state. And there are hundreds of acres of these dead snags, which pose even a greater risk to the community because it's just aerial dead wood. And so what Napa is doing is removing the snags, putting it in an air burner, creating electricity, and plumbing that right into the grid. So this cleanup, they're actually regenerating energy from an event that would have been horrific. There's a lot of energies we can reach into in urban areas. Earth energies, probably most of you know about geothermal energy, where we dig down, where there's a hot spring and we pump water in, and then steam comes flying up and we generate electricity from that. But these are actually more practical energies. When you embed it, so if you dug down 5 feet right here, the soil temperature would be in the mid-50s. And if you can root your structure or your outdoor living area into that mid-50s, it becomes far easier to cool, and it becomes far easier to warm in winter. It just completely regulates indoor temperatures if you can embed a structure into earth. I give some good examples. This is at Cal Poly Pomona. This was done in the early 1980s, and as a response to the first energy crisis we really had in the nation. If you remember the 1970s and the Carter era, everybody was looking at these really more hippie energies. And this is that design. We just don't see many designs like this. But that concrete has been embedded in the soil. So if you touch that concrete on a 100-degree day, it would only be 70 or 80 degrees because it has that pull from the earth to remove that radiant energy. This is Rogers Gardens in Corona del Mar. And what they did at their retail center is they just mounded, piled soil around their retail building to manage indoor temperatures in their retail center. And then this is in the Marina Art and Garden Center, and this is their cooling place. Ross gets very hot in the summer, and this is where everybody goes to relax on that hot day. They're using earth energies. Every time they lean into that concrete, they are getting the benefit of having that concrete embedded into that 50-degree temperatures. So these are just passive energies that are very effective. And then human energy. We don't have much power. We really don't. Our output is really small, and it takes us forever to do things. But when compared to fossils, we are so much more energy efficient. Just a quick example. I rode my bike from Central Oregon to Mexico. And I calculated how much energy it took my body to make that trip, those thousands of miles. And my body in food energy used the equivalent of 1.5 gallons of gasoline to ride that trip. If I had done that in a car, that would have been over 40 gallons. The climate impact is completely different. The reason we don't see human energies in our world is because of labor costs. Labor is far more expensive than gasoline, and that's why these industrial energies rule. But if you want to save the planet, you're going to do it yourself. You're going to push your lawnmower. You're going to use shears instead of a weed whacker. You're just going to prioritize your energy. So get your kids out there. And then solar. Everybody thinks solar. All my students, when I say solar energy, they're all PV. PV can't make PV. There's not one PV panel being made by another PV panel, which is the minimum definition of sustainability, right? You create one energy source and then it breeds all the others. Yeah, PV is unable to breed itself. So leaning on this passive ethic, daylighting is the number one. If I worked on your worked on your property, I would look at creating as much daylight inside your structure as absolutely possible so we stop turning on light bulbs when the sun is out. It's just a waste of energy. Not only that, this is my dad's office, and he put a solar tube in his house just to light up his office during the day. He doesn't need any lights. And the benefit of that is you get the full spectrum of light. You're healthier. Whereas if you have an LED light, you're only getting the blue wavelength, which causes anxiety in humans. So you really want sunlight into your structure. Thermal converters, during the Carter years, we used to rebate on thermal converters. And thermal converters are just hot water heaters. If you've got a large family or a pool, they are incredibly efficient. You get your money back on that investment within 5 to 8 years. They are wonderful. The reason we don't rebate those in California anymore is because of the unions. This is a people's energy, not an economic driving energy. Because you can install it, you can maintain it, and so that's why we really don't see these things being rebated, despite their incredible efficiencies and known power potential. And then turning as much as our urban areas into a photosynthesizing sponge has so many benefits. Cleaner air, cooler temperatures, feelings of well-being all spring when we plant up our urban areas. This one tree has been gulping oxides along this major artery for 149 years. When you walk under that iconic tree, temperatures drop by 6 degrees. The air is cleaner, you feel better. This is the power of photosynthesis. And then wind is by far my favorite energy. I have a very porous garden intentionally. I keep wind flowing through my garden, and I do it for a lot of reasons. One, it cools my garden. You get that wind chill effect. It improves air quality. If you drop wind speeds, what happens is those ultrafine particulates start falling out of the atmosphere and land up on the ground right where you breathe. And just a little bit of breeze, 4 to 5 to 6 miles an hour, will lift those ultrafine particulates above your mouth. Your air is just going to be better. I teach IPM, UCLA Extension, and fungus is one of the biggest problems. And when we really look at the garden, most fungus problems are related to poor air circulation. They've just locked in their gardens and air does not move. Stagnant air creates all kinds of problems. And then wind, sailing predates the wheel. We're all mariners. If you're human, you travel an ocean. It's in your blood. We've been sailing a lot longer than we've been pulling carts. And it moves things too, I just want to say. So dandelion, does anybody eat dandelion? Am I the only dandelion? Yeah. All right, one dandelion. I eat dandelion. I've eaten my garden. I've lived there for 21 years. I've eaten my garden down to dandelion probably like 8 times. But because my garden is so porous, I always get it back. It always blows in because I'm allowing wind energy to bring you goodness. And I'm just lucky nobody upwind eats dandelion. So I'm always getting it from the non-eaters. I don't know if you know this, but dandelion flowers were a common cure for low-grade depression. They have an acid, a lactorium acid in them, and when you just take 6 flowers, pour boiling water over them, let them seed for 15 minutes, and then gulp it up, you'll just feel better about yourself. It's a small pain-killing asset in that flower. Most bitter greens are like that. And then self-care, we're almost getting here. My students love this more than anything. When I teach them how to care for themselves, how to really care for themselves, how to make them feel better about themselves, how to make them feel stronger. I think self-care should be outside every hospital, every convalescent home, every retirement facility, every preschool should be plants that provide self-care. And there's a lot of parts to this, but I just narrowed it down to cut flowers, fragrances, health remedies, and soaps and shampoos. Cut flowers. This is the crop we should be growing in urban areas. It syncs up with that ceremonial items really well, but there's a lot of benefits with growing cut flowers. One, they're longer lasting than food. If you don't get food immediately and eat it, you're increasing vector problems. You could get rats or parrots or aphids or mealybugs or something if you don't get to that food fast enough. It really doesn't spoil. And in fact, some of these cut flowers look better when they're dried. Low vector problems, they're ridiculously easy to grow. Really easy to grow. They're resource conserving. You can get drought tolerant. You can get nutrient conserving. They are really easy and powerful effects. Research shows bringing flowers indoors improves moods, improves memory, and improves relationships. Little wonder when somebody dies, we give them flowers. That's how powerful they truly are. We could be growing them everywhere. We could be growing them everywhere. This is a dashing photo. This is a story from the LA Times. This is a gal that grows cut flowers in San Diego. She, like I, live on the poor side of the tracks. She took over some of her decrepit neighbors' gardens to grow cut flowers. She sells them at the farmer's market and for special events. She has done so well, her and her fiance are now able to afford a home in San Diego as a young person. This, I think, is the new green economy. This is what I see is 22nd century urban living. Really inspired by her story. There was a lot of stories like this that the LA Times did for a while. Fragrances are powerful. As many of you know, you probably work with fragrances, but they can soothe, they can calm, and they can elevate. These are just cleansing sticks that I regularly burn in my house. I don't do incense because it's too oily. It sticks to my house. But I really like burning because it's a vagrant fragrance where you smell it and then it blows away and you're on to the next fragrance if you want. But I have juniper, cypress, bay leaves, lavender, rosemary, tea tree, pine, mugwort. I would not recommend mugwort. It is highly flammable. Terrible story. I had my pants around my ankles and lit that. Yeah, so, but these are just wonderful fragrance, and they really enliven. My favorite is by far the lavender and the cypress, particularly the cypress. Really woodsy. When I burnt the pine, I have fire PSDD, and when I burnt the pine, it felt like I was in a forest fire, so I just threw that out. And then pine pitch, I made a pine pitch salve. We love horticultural in California. We just prune trees for no particular reason. And so there's pine pitch all over urban areas, and I just scrape it up, I clean it out, I melt it, get all the particulates out of it, then combine it with beeswax, olive oil, and just make a fragrance. And boy, I smell great. And it's called a base note. It's one of your heavier notes. It's penetrating and long lasting, so it lasts for about 3 to 4 hours. And people on the train just really appreciate when I have this on. And then I always have a fragrant rose and mint by my desk, and it just calms me. I don't get so manic in front of the computer. It just soothes and opens up that modern mind, kind of calms the primitive mind. You can really tell when I'm off my mint and rose. But fragrances for me, once you kind of get experimenting with them, you really find that they really are powerful and can move you in certain directions. And then healthcare remedies, just flat-out remedies. This has been so much fun to play around with. When I first started gardening in 1979, by the mid-1980s, I was already a naturalist for a nature center. I was just this native guy, and so I studied all Native American uses for plants. And then as time went on, I started experimenting with all plants. And wow, are they powerful. So you can grow right outside your door constipation medicine, like fennel and chia, right outside your door. You don't need to go to CVS. Depression, dandelion flowers, sweet violet, elderberry flowers, digestion, goosefoot, stinging nettle, ease of breathing, bay, and eucalyptus and tea tree, hypertension. I don't know if you guys know this one, but anxiety and hypertension is the Australian willow. It's a tree in every city, and it's so easy to find. It's a member of the citrus family, and you smoke it, and you feel like a duck in water. Everything just flies right off of you. It just eases. So if you're prone to panic attacks or anxiety, this is medicine that's been used for thousands of years by Aboriginal Australians. And we have it all over Southern California. Low energy ginkgo. Ginkgo is such a common tree in cities that I have one street away. I harvest all my ginkgo. When I drink ginkgo tea, it feels like a tailwind. You just move through the day. It improves circulation. You have more oxygen in your body. Low libido. That's chase tree. Does anybody know Vitex, the chase tree? Oh, wow. So it's sold in health food stores as a remedy for menstruation and cramping in women. And historically, I call it the Queen's tree because all the royal court would have the chase tree in their property just for those properties. But it has this other distinction. It makes the only color-fast green dye I have ever found. So I was brewing it up in my house, and I knew about its aphrodisiac qualities, but I just kind of blew it off. And after 90 minutes of brewing this plant, holy Toledo! Just if you're going to play with that plant, have a partner handy. I did it by myself, and that was a big mistake. And then muscle and joint aches, you have yerba mansa, the native, which is phenomenal. You have camphor, which is in tiger balm. Camphor is a common street tree. Pain relief is, bitter lettuce, prickly lettuce, and wild lettuce, the lactas. It's the reason we originally grew lettuce, was for its pain-killing qualities. But the lettuce you eat in the grocery store is actually, that medicine has been pulled out of it. You don't get the health benefits of why we originally cultivated that plant 12,000 years ago, but it was for pain relief. That is the Advil. Sterilizing, we have tea tree and lemons, warts. Anybody that works with animal is likely to get warts on their knuckles, and that's sow thistle. Sow thistle will get rid of warts in 2 to 3 weeks, and it's everywhere. It's just a weed that's ever present. Here's what, this is passion flower. If you ever drink that 99 tea, you go, does anybody drink 99 tea? Yeah, well, it's passion flower that you're drinking. It's the leaf. And passion flower is everywhere and ridiculously easy to grow. And really 100 years ago, we would have all known this. We didn't have access to CVS, and like this would have been common knowledge. But we've been pushing people out of landscapes for over 100 years, telling them that their health and well-being will not be found in the land around them. And that has had severe impacts. And then just some quick things. This is a bath I'm making out of cheeseweed. It's a common weed that's coming up right now. It's really high in saponins, which is a natural cleaner and emulsifier, but it's really high in pectin and vitamin E. When you wash it, it feels like you've just bathed in aloe vera. This is prickly sow thistle. I brew this up after a long bike ride, and it's for pain relief. It's my Advil. Horehound candy. I make this every fall. Horehound is a decongestant and expectorant. If you're Persian, you grew up on this candy. And then here I'm smoking the Australian willow because I'm about to visit my family. Hope you're not watching. And then just a 3-slide conclusion. The neat thing about this perspective is for years, I was always the expert. and telling people how to define sustainability, right? I give you a plant list, and if you didn't have that plant list, you were not sustainable. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that everybody's different. Your energy needs are different than mine. Your textile needs are different. Your healthcare needs are different. That means your relationship with the land around you is going to be different. I am no judge. As an expert, I can just give you the tools to create the greatest health possible. But I could never tell you you were sustainable or not, because that involves a relationship, an intimate, personal relationship. And I believe so strongly that this is what we need to cultivate in our urban areas, these deep and meaningful relationships. You define sustainability, not somebody at my college or even me. And I've taught hundreds of thousands of students during the course of this last 12 years of writing this book. And this has been the hardest thing to teach, is the receiving part. How to go in the garden and let it heal you. How to let it feed you, let it hear you, let it cool you. It's the receiving part. We lavish our gardens with so much resources and time, and then we turn our back every time it wants to give us something. And this is the thing to teach, is how to receive. And this is just a good picture of it. This is just a tunica and grape, wild grape, and it's all edible. The grape is dola. You can use the leaf. It's an edible leaf. The canes themselves make wonderful baskets. The tunica itself, the pads make the Nepalis, which is just a phenomenal food. The sap inside that cactus is an incredible medicine for your skin. And then the fruit itself is so high in sugar and antioxidants. It is wonderful. And to have people to see that plant as something that you can engage in, and you can protect, you can help it, and you can receive from it. That is defining sustainability and relationship. And then it has the cochineal, the most valuable dye there is. So going forward, I think I'm getting old. I don't have many years left, and I'm just determined to root and grow healthy hues in me. Whether you like it or not, I'm going to create a garden that every time you walk by it, you're better for having walked by my garden. There's not going to be any stabbing or poisoning plants, but healing and helping plants. So whether fire or heat, nutrition or joy, we can grow a healthy, more resilient California with you in the ground. We are growing inhabitants from residents. And that's what I'm selling tonight. And then here's some of my books. Is there any questions?
Now we have questions, see?
Thank you. Which of the juniper genus do you like the berries and for the nitrogen absorption?
Yes, the particulates.
So the others typically I use anything really, it's not the height that's the best, it's the height. So when you're trying to get some road dust out of your house, you want to create good air flow because you don't want that air stacking on the property. So you really don't want a juniper any higher than this. So those really heavy particulates are really going to get caught up as they fly off the road into that juniper bush. But you still have airflow enough to get those ultrafine particulates to your neighbor's house. That's the goal. Just a little bit further downstream. Juniper berries are powerful.
Was there a Santa Hoya that was different than all the other Hoyas that we preferred?
Nope, the Hoya, so it's Piper. So Piper.
The Santa Hoya.
Yeah.
Is that a different?
No, it's Hoya Santa.
A Hoya Santa.
Yeah, so it's the root beer tree.
Oh.
I don't know if you know the root beer tree, but it has, in South America, they call it baby juice diaper. Because the leaf is just huge. But it's an edible leaf. They would have wrapped all their fishes and meats in it and then barbecued it just like we do with grape leaves. But it's edible. It tastes like root beer. And then they use it as a building material because when they cut it down the ground, it creates these kings that are cut straight. So that would be all the poles.
that Hoya Santa is in the Piper, and Piper is what is our pepper. That whole Piper family is really medicinal and good for us. This,
Yes. Big trees instead of setting down the
big trees instead of,
like vines.
oh, that's a really great question there. I think trees are far better for everybody, because it's not only benefiting you, but it's benefiting your neighbors and your community. But don't paint windows or Title 24. Cal Green, it's a state law. So if you do any kind of remodel, you are going to be forced to put it double paint.
And
I would prefer that. Yeah.
mostly small, but then
Yeah. You're right. You're so much younger than I am. It would work out for you. I think the metrics would be a little different for me. Yeah, that's a good point. There's no black and white in any of this. It's just infinite shades of gray. And how you negotiate that gray is the art of being a parent or a leader. It's like, oh, I know I didn't answer your question, but good one.
or your
Where can we buy your books?
Oh, you can buy it online or at the publisher, or you can just email me, that was such a nice question. Or you can email me and I'll just mail you and I'll sign it, which would be ideal. My email is, it's a long one. It's NEWAIR@mindspring.com. Yeah, NEWAIR @mindspring, MINDSPRING.com. That goes back to 1991. You can also just Google Doug Kent and Gardens, and I've written so many books, I'll come right up on the top of that search. And go right to my website and it has contact information. So thank you so much for letting me fulfill my 30-year-old dream. It really is. I grew up with you guys, and I've always idolized this. Well,
I have a question online.
I really never tell me.
Question online is what are some good choices of cut flowers to grow in a small yard?
Oh my gosh, Dad. So in my book, I list like 100 flowers, all based on whether you want to dry them, whether you want fragrance, whether you want activating colors like oranges and reds, whether you want pastel colors. So, it's like asking someone to pick their favorite child. I don't think I can do that. It's a really good question. If you email me, I'll just send you that part of the chapter.
I have a question.
Yes.
Have you heard of the traditional adobe houses?
Yes.
Are those sustainable or
Yes.
okay? Do they also help with cooling and things like that?
Phenomenally. The thing with the adobe houses, and there's one in Claremont, Uncommon Good, has the largest adobe within this range, and they just have, it holds on to moisture. So that's the only problem with adobe is that you almost need a little heat inside the structure to keep the moisture being pressed on it. It's the only thing I've seen about adobe. And it's very lengthy to build. Well, at least the way they do it. But yeah, this is LA Times ran that fantastic article on adobe houses as far as fire protection goes and their incredible success rate against fires. So I think you're onto something. That's if you like digging.
All right. We're going to spin the wheel of names for the folks that are online.
Okay, go ahead and click it. I'll just do it.
Well, that is fun. Yeah, I don't know how you did that. That is really cool.
Carol B. We know Carol B. Carol B, are you still with us? Can you send something in the chat or raise your hand?
Yeah.
Okay, so she's there. All right, good job, Carol B. You get a copy of Doug's book if you don't have it already. Thank you all for coming. There are more plants for sale in the back. Thank you, Douglas Kent. That was a lot. Very interesting. Thank you. And please grab some snacks on your way out.